Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bit-Sized Investing Podcast, where I, Kanva, seek to unpack all the investing jargon into simple, understandable terms. Episode 1, Investing 101, where I seek to answer the question that I often get asked, where do I even begin? But before that, bit of a foreword. I am not an official financial advisor, and everything I share here is general in nature and just my thoughts. If you want something specific to your needs, please seek official financial advice. And just also as another additional side note, none of the views expressed here are of that representative that of my employer. They're just purely of my own. Now with that out of the way, I think I can finally begin to answer the question of where to even begin. Mind the pun, but puns aside, I'm actually not going to answer that question till towards the end of the episode. I think the best place to start is by laying out the key definitions and just laying out a bit of a groundwork, explaining some basics before I even start answering that question. So I actually want to start with defining an asset class and what that actually even means. So an asset class, as the name kind of suggests, just refers to the type of asset. So for example, you can have property, that's the type of asset, land. Within that, you can get gold, you get stocks, you can get nowadays crypto, you can get even things like your car is an asset as well, but that's usually considered a depreciating asset, which just means it goes down in value over time. There can be exceptions to this, like vintage cars, so on. Anyways, I'm not going to get into every single one of those here, and that's not really the aim. The aim was just to lay the definition, and secondly, just also mention that the key focus of this series is going to be on stocks, but there's correlations with other asset classes and stocks and so on. We'll get more into what that kind of means and how that kind of happens as we go along in the series, but the key focus will be on stocks. Now, let's just start with some real simple basics, like what even are stocks and how does it all work? So to answer that first part of that, stocks basically refer to companies that are listed on a public exchange. I'll get into what that means shortly, but firstly, stocks kind of just refer to individual companies. So a stock is just a company in very simple terms. Then within that, you have something, you buy shares in that company. So as the name basically suggests, you're buying a share of that company or an individual stock for that matter. So quite often the term you might hear stock market or share market used quite interchangeably. Technically speaking, it's a stock market where you buy shares then into those stocks. But I mean, that's not the most important part, but just so you know. And then in terms of putting it together with that stock exchange, this is kind of done through a stock exchange is kind of just like a marketplace where you have buyers and sellers of the shares of individual companies or stocks within it. So therefore, you get multiple exchanges around the world who facilitate this. They're just a facilitator of this. The largest in the world is the New York Stock Exchange, which you may have heard of. Another one in the US that's very large is the NASDAQ. And you get multiple other ones globally, like the LSE or London Stock Exchange in London. In Australia, you get the ASX or the Australian Stock Exchange and so on. These are actually individual companies that are basically facilitating this buying and selling. In some ways, a bit like how banks facilitate lending and savings, but that's also maybe for another episode in terms of how banks work. But basically, what stocks are in really simple terms, they're just a company where you buy individual shares in, and this is all facilitated by a stock exchange. Companies listed on the stock exchange are also often referred to as public companies. This is a term you may have heard of before, as well as you may have heard the saying, oh, this company is going public, which basically means the company is now listing on a stock exchange. And this is due to the fact, as the name suggests, now it is open to the general public or people to buy or sell shares in this company. This is against a private company or a private limited company, which is something you may have also heard of before. And this just refers to the fact that the company's ownership is tightly controlled within an individual, a group of people, or it could even be institutes. But it is not simply open to the general public to buy or sell shares in. Having said that, it may not actually be so simple for you as an individual to go and buy and sell shares directly through an exchange. This is due to the fact that exchanges usually only like to deal with authorized accredited people or institutes for that matter. And therefore, historically, this has meant that there would be authorized people on their trading floors. This is something you may have seen through in some movie or TV show, or, chaotic places, whole bunch of people there waving their hands. You get big screens with, stock tickers flashing. By the way, stock ticker is just referred to an acronym for a company that's listed on the market's name. Flashing and, bells ringing, hammers going, I don't know whatnot. This just the really chaotic place. I personally cannot comprehend how that even functioned. All that usually is now, for the most part, gone. Most of the trading these days, or trading referring to buying and selling of shares, just happens electronically or digitally now, which de-chaotifies that process, if that's even a word. But at the same time, these exchanges still usually only like to deal with other accredited organizations. And therefore, you as an individual usually cannot directly go to an exchange in most countries. So then you may be wondering, how or where do I actually even begin? Well, to finally begin answering that question, you can do so through what you call brokers. So they're kind of like an intermediary between you and the exchange. They have their complicated back-end internal processes, how they fully operate. I won't get into the full details of that, but in essence, in some way or form, they are basically taking orders from you to, let's say, buy or sell a share, and then they're dealing with those order requests directly through an exchange as an intermediary between the two parties. Globally, there have, over the years, multiple apps or startups have sprung up which offer these sort of services. Traditionally, a lot of banks offered them as well, but depends once again in individual cases. But usually banks didn't offer the best consumer experience, or the fees they charged were usually quite a lot. Again, it can vary case by case basis, but these days a lot of these apps have kind of made it a lot more accessible and even cheaper for customers. So many apps exist globally. I'm not going to really recommend any particular ones or go into details of advantages, disadvantages of each, but I'll just blurt out a few names. Maybe globally you get eToro, Webull. In the US, I know Robinhood's quite big. In Australia, you get something like Superhero, you get Stake, Sharesies, and so on. I'm sure there's a lot more that exist out there, but just throwing some names out there. Basically, you get one of these apps and you create an account, you transfer some money over to them, and that kind of gives you access to whatever exchange that they have access to. So that's actually another point as well. Sometimes some of these apps may only offer access to certain exchanges around the world, let's say be it the NASDAQ and the NYSE, but they may not have access to the London Stock Exchange for that matter. So depending on what your needs, what you want, or your preferences, different apps may suit your need better. Again, also with how their fees and things work. So I'll leave that up to you to research, but that's kind of like a starting point. And to be honest, if anything I've said in this episode so far was new information to you, probably I would say that you're not quite ready to actually start putting your money to work, as we say, or more technically, actually investing your money into anything yet. So hopefully, definitely, again, as I said in the beginning, seek financial advice if that is what you need, professional financial advice, that is. Otherwise, keep listening. I'll keep looking to uncover some basic jargons. I've had to do a lot of my own research when I began this journey myself. I'm hoping to condense it all down, starting from the really, really basics, which I think a lot of people do not cover, and then slowly building up from there. And hopefully as time goes on, I'll definitely get into more complicated things. And if there's anything specifically you want me to cover, please let me know. Please reach out. Any feedback, let me know as well. Otherwise, until next time, see you then.